Good morning. Thank you for starting your week off here with me today. And as we'll be looking this morning at the 25th Psalm. 25th Psalm. And so if you want to grab your Bible and turn there, we'll be starting with this Psalm. Quite a shift from where we have been the last, particularly the last Psalm, but really the last three Psalms have been more of a rejoicing type psalm. This is a psalm dealing with crisis. This is a psalm that shows us of David's confidence in prayer and where he turns during a time of crisis in his life. Like many of the other psalms, we don't know the nature of the crisis. Ironside, I believe, writes in his commentary on this text that he believes that the wording seems to be during the time of Absalom's rebellion, and that David is looking at it and looking back to his sin with Bathsheba, and that God is still visiting that iniquity, visiting that sin on David. Let's talk a little bit about the actual psalm, the structure, before we get into the words of the psalm. This is an interesting psalm. We don't really see it in the English version, in English version of the psalm, but it is what is known as an acrostic psalm. There are 9 of these scattered throughout the book of Psalms. We will come to others as we go along. And what I mean by an acrostic psalm is that each verse in the Hebrew started with the next letter in the Hebrew alphabet. So again, if it was English, the first verse would start with A, the second verse would start with B, and so on. We don't see that in English, but in the Hebrew, it does work its way through the English alphabet. This one is not like some of them. It is a little bit different because it has 22 verses, and there are only 21 letters from the Hebrew alphabet used, and that's because the first and the second verse start with the same Hebrew letter. And what's important about that, other than being a unique characteristic of the psalm, is that it is the general understanding, belief of those psalms that are written in that manner, is that they are written that way to make them easier to remember, to make them an instructive psalm. So that a person could memorize again, as if it started with A, B, C, D, E in our language, our alphabet, by starting with consecutive letters, that it is meant to be memorized. It is meant to be instruction. And so, again, this one's a little different because, again, it uses the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet twice in the first and second verse, and then it uses what we transliterate to be R twice in the 18th and 19th verse. So it doesn't go straight through, but those two verses, when you look at them, they go together, and so that's the nature of the psalm. Again, just an interesting. It really doesn't change anything for you and I because we don't see it, other than to remind us that this is a song of instruction. I think, kind of along the lines, and forgive me, this is terrible, along the lines of, I don't even remember the words to it now, but if you remember when you were younger, there were little songs to teach you to wash your hands and, things like that. That's kind of a poor comparison, but again, it was a song meant to be put into the mind to call back for instruction. Again, we don't know when David wrote the psalm. We don't know the circumstances, but it does appear, again, obviously it was a time of crisis. As I said, Ironside believes it was during the rebellion by Absalom. And David was reflecting on his sin with Bathsheba and how that had been an ongoing, how that had caused him ongoing difficulty in his life, and so David is going through a very dark time in his life of some type when he writes this psalm. Again, as I've said before, I think it's important. Actually, I think it's good that God doesn't give us again too many details, because I'm afraid if we had details, if we knew for certain that this psalm was directly related to Absalom's rebellion, then I'm afraid that our tendency would be to then pigeonhole this psalm, and we would read it and its instruction and say, well, my son's never rebelled against me, so this psalm doesn't apply. By leaving it vague, just we know David was in a crisis, we can read this psalm and take its instruction, whether it's a time of sickness or job loss or financial setback, some time of persecution, family, whatever the crisis might be, we can take this psalm and we're more likely to take its instruction than if we knew that it was related to a particular situation that David was in, and so that's some of the background. Whatever it was that David was going on in David's life. As you read this, you're going to see that it's obvious that David understands that what is going on, that there is a connection between his sin and his problem. I said, and valuable lesson for us there, that we would learn that sin has consequences. You can pray and you can ask God for forgiveness, but you still face the consequences of that action. As I heard someone giving their testimony on one occasion, it was someone who had had a car accident and injured, maybe even killed. I don't remember exactly, but done some serious damage, and they were high when they had that accident, and they were giving their testimony and saying, God has forgiven me for what I did, but there's still the consequences of what I did. And so David here, this psalm reminds us that there, as my mother used to say, you can drive a nail in a piece of wood and you pull that nail out, the nail may be gone, but the hole is still there. And so there's always consequences for our actions. May just be, careless words, things we said that we shouldn't have. Doesn't have to be driving, drunk, but there's consequences to our actions. And so when we find ourselves in those times of discouragement and crisis, David shows us that that's when it drove him back and sent him running back to the Father for his relationship. And so David, obviously, when we look at this, he has something going on outside, but something going on inside. Again, he's being attacked from the outside, but inside, he's still dealing with the guilt of his sin. And so as we start into this psalm, lengthy introduction there, probably the longest introduction that we've done on any of the psalms so far, but this psalm is by far the most, I guess you'd say, in depth as far as the structure, the breakdown, background of the psalm, and so we're going to be looking at how do we deal with the adversaries, the crisis, the problems in our life, which is again a fairly common theme among psalms, but this one may be one of the prize psalms to have in your tool belt in dealing with those issues. And so we're going to be picking up here in the first verse. And so David, he has nowhere else to go, nowhere else to turn. He's tried everything else he knows to do. And so he says, "Unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul." And that word, that phrase, "lift up my soul," is simply a position of the heart, a position that where we're putting everything we have. We're putting our entire confidence into God. The truth is, many times people, they say they're putting their confidence in God, but they continue to try to do things and figure things out on their own. I'm reminded of the song that said, "Jesus, take the wheel." That's really kind of sort of what David's saying here. "Lord, I've run this thing into the ground, and so now I'm just." I'm putting myself into your hands, into your. I'm trusting on you to get me out of this. And so, unto thee, he says, do I lift up my soul. Oh my God, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. And so the situation in David's life, the sin in his life, had brought him to the end. I want to do something real quick. If you will, drop down and look in verse 7. David says, "Remember not the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions." And so I want to throw that in so you know where I'm coming from when I say a lot of what's going on here in David's life goes back to his guilt for his sin, for the actions that he had made. He says as a younger man, and so he lost his confidence in himself. He was feeling guilty before God, and so he at this point he has again done everything else. I think at this point he's tried everything, done everything. And he finally comes to the place where he realizes that his only hope, again, is capital letters, all capital, Lord, in the covenant-keeping God. That he had to present himself to God. And then he says, "Oh my God," capital G-O-D, and that word is the Hebrew name for God, Elohim, and that name means the mighty, the strong, the one that can change a situation. And so he's used Jehovah and Elohim here in a matter of just moments in addressing God. And so he is calling on the all-powerful, covenant-keeping God and declaring his trust in him. And he says, "Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me." And so David was concerned here that his enemies were going to be able to use this to shame him and to bring actual shame on to God. And so that's how, again, that is the opening. We're going to stop there this morning because I want you to get a clear picture before we move into the psalm, any further into the psalm, of David's spiritual condition. The position he is placing himself in as he comes to God at this point, and he says, God, I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, God, I'm at my wit's end. I'm at the end of my rope. I have gone as far as I know to go, and I don't know what else to do, but I'm going to place my trust in you. I don't know why God has laid it out and why we started 4 months ago and have been working through the psalm and ended up here in these opening verses of the 25th Psalm here this Monday morning, 10th day of August, how we ended up here. But I do believe that God is in control, and I believe He has a purpose and a plan for why we're here and for why you're listening. I don't know what situation you're going through. I don't know what crisis, what difficulty you find yourself in this morning, but I do know this, that the only place you have to turn, the only place for hope, for healing, for salvation is in God Himself, just as David had discovered. And so whatever you're doing today, whatever you're going through, whatever problem it is, as I've been talking this morning, things have been going through your mind. Yep, that's me. Yep. Well, you need to turn those over to God and pray this simple prayer. Unto Thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. O my God, I trust to Thee. Let me not be ashamed. And so pray that prayer this morning. Take time early this morning to pray that prayer over your situation and trust God as you deal and walk through this valley that you find yourself in. All right, I hope that helps you today. I hope that encourages you and gets you through whatever you find yourself, wherever you find yourself struggling today. All right, we'll see you back here first thing tomorrow morning.